Hey, you. Thanks for joining me once again for episode 7 of Richard Bey Talk. I am here for a little while sharing this time with you along with Albert Reinoso, my very dedicated and helpful producer. And remember, you can also listen to this podcast on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, on YouTube, you get the video, and on Facebook. And if you have friends whom you think might be interested in this sort of thing, please recommend me, and you can also share it with them. And for yourself, subscribe so you don't miss one episode. All right, so let's begin. When I was a little boy, my father took me to see the Disney movie Old Yeller. Now, Old Yeller was the story of a kid in the past, in the American wilds, who had a yellow lab, and he loved this dog, and the dog was like Lassie. It did so many amazing things. And the dog, near the end of the film, the boy is attacked by a wild boar, and he gets gored by the boar, and Old Yeller contracts rabies and is a mad dog. And his father goes to the boy and he says, listen, you have to shoot and kill Old Yeller. He's a mad dog. We have to get rid of him. And the boy, I love Old Yeller. No, well, he's mad. You've got to get rid of him. So the boy goes in and shoots Old Yeller. Now, after I saw this movie, I came home. I buried my head in the pillow and I was sobbing uncontrollably. My father came in the room and said, what's the matter, Richard? I said, they killed Old Yeller. And my father said, oh, no, they didn't. I said, yes, they did. He was mad and they had to kill him. Oh, no. The dog is an actor. He was trained to act mad. He wasn't really mad, but he's dead. No, he's not dead, Richard. He's alive. He's probably happy somewhere eating, dog food. He was acting a role. It's a story. Okay, that was the first time I realized that if you died in a movie or things that happened, it wasn't real. I was really a young kid. But I also realized when you have a mad dog, you got to put him down. Now, in politics, there's something called the madman theory. It began with Richard Nixon. In his administration, they called it the madman theory because he wanted the North Vietnamese and the communist countries of the Eastern Bloc to think that he was crazy, capable of doing anything. In his memoir, Bob Haldeman, who was one of Nixon's top lieutenants, said, Nixon came to him and said, I call it the madman theory, Bob. I want the North Vietnamese to believe I've reached the point where I might do anything. We'll just slip out the word to them. Oh, for God's sakes. You know, Nixon is obsessed about communism. We can't restrain him when he's angry, and he has his hand on the nuclear button. Well, Nixon might have really been a mad dog. After a while, he had an alcoholism problem. And he did say to Kissinger, strategic bombing is all well and good, but I want to bomb them to smithereens. Let them fly. Let them fly, Henry. So, sometimes you don't know if somebody is acting crazy like Old Yeller or like Nixon or like Putin. Now, there was a great British military historian who said, the chief incalculable in war is human will. And Nixon found that out in Vietnam. And Putin is now finding that out in Ukraine. All right, let's look at that picture of Putin. All right, look at this. He's meeting, these are his national security advisors. I guess they don't have Zoom in Russia. At least they don't have it now. But
explain the picture.
All right, it's Putin meeting with his national security advisors. And people are assuming, he doesn't want to get close to them because of COVID. I think he doesn't want to get close to them because one of them might pull out a gun and shoot him and take Lindsey Graham's advice.
And for those who can't see, Putin is maybe 50 yards away from his advisors.
Oh, he's like, like a quarter of a football field away from them. I mean, I think he should get one of those cheerleading tubes and go, "Hello, Sergey, what do you think we should do? I don't know." All right. So, and Putin released this picture. Now, Zelensky is down there in the tents with his soldiers and marching around and visiting the wounded. And he wants those pictures to be out to show that he is with the people. Putin wants this picture to be out. Why? Because he wants us to think that he's crazy and paranoid and that he can do anything. It used to be that MAD stood for mutually assured destruction. Now it stands for a madman who might destroy us all, or at least that's what he wants us to think. All right, now let's stick with this topic for a minute, Putin being crazy, because he just announced sanctions. The sanctions that the EU and the United States have against Russia are an act of war. Oh, really, Vlad? Then why don't you declare war on the United States and the 30 nations of the EU if it's an act of war? And then he says if you have a no-fly zone, that's an act of war. So I guess we're already in war, aren't we, Vlad? So, if the sanctions have already put us in an act of war, why not have a no-fly zone that puts us in an act of war? And earlier, Albert posed the question to me. This was before the podcast,
right?
And we had quite a discussion about it. And what you were saying, what basically, Albert?
We went off on a tangent with this, but I don't even remember what the original question was.
Well, you're saying, why don't we have a no-fly zone? And I was telling you, if we have a no-fly zone, we might as well invade the country with troops as well, because it's basically F-16s and MiGs, shooting missiles at each other, shooting themselves out of the sky. American servicemen, Russian pilots, they're all dying. Then we're really in a war.
My question was not why don't we have a no-fly zone, because I know
what was your question?
The Ukrainians are asking for a no-fly zone, and we are rightly saying we can't provide a no-fly zone because that brings us into the war, and we don't want to do that.
Correct.
But my question really goes further than that, and it is, when do we say to ourselves that forget about what a no-fly zone means? These people need to be protected, and will there come a point where we say we need to protect them come hell or high water? And that's what a no-fly zone will do.
Yeah, well, ask the State Department during FDR that refused to bomb the railways leading to Auschwitz. Okay? I mean, there are also we are already at that point where these people need our protection, and especially protection from the air. And we are supplying them now, it looks like, with MiG-29s. There are 4 or 5 different formerly Soviet satellite countries that fly MiG-29s, and Zelensky's Ukraine's pilots, they can't fly an F-16, but they can fly the MiGs. So we are supplying them to them. But you're right, it's a difficult question to answer. And what makes it even more difficult is a guy who has a nuclear arsenal. A nuclear arsenal, by the way, that's larger than the one we have in the United States. Not that that would make a difference. I don't think Putin would use it. But, people say, when people have said, oh, Putin's this great chess player and he's got his moves. And then other people say, and I think they're correct, he's not a great chess player. He's a poker player. And if he has a bad hand, he bluffs. And I think he's bluffing. Now, would I bet the house on his hand, against his hand? Would I bet the world against it? I don't know. But I think he's bluffing. And I think he wants us to think that he's crazy. And that's why he's released a picture like that. That's my feeling anyway. Okay. The other thing that you hear a lot these days, especially, I flip around all the channels and you hear, on Fox News and on the radio, Trump would handle this so much better. That is so ridiculous. It is such a denial of what we've seen Trump do over the years. Trump said that it was Ukraine that was hacking our election, not Russia. Remember the humiliation in Helsinki? I mean, that was the worst thing to happen, from a president since Bill Clinton put a cigar in Monica Lewinsky's vagina. He believed Putin over our own national intelligence. He said, "Oh, Putin told me he didn't do anything, and I believed him." And recently called Putin a genius. And of course, in that phone call to Zelensky, he held up arms to Ukraine if Zelensky wouldn't consent to be his opposition research arm for his campaign in Ukraine. So come on, and then just a little over a week ago, Trump was saying this.
I went in yesterday and there was a television screen and I said, this is genius. Putin declares a big portion of Ukraine. Putin declares it as independent. Oh, that's wonderful. So Putin is now saying it's independent, a large section of Ukraine. I said, how smart is that? And he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. That's the strongest peace force. We could use that on our southern border. By the way, this never would have happened with us. Had I been in office, not even thinkable. This would never have happened. And you know what the response was from Biden?
There was no response. Oh, well, he's had quite a response. Remember when Trump declared that NATO was obsolete? I think that Joe Biden has done an excellent job of proving not only to America, but to the world that NATO is not obsolete. And on the other hand, I think that Putin probably says to himself, hey, I ran around, around the last American president, I ran circles around him. I had him wrapped around my little finger. Merkel is gone. While Trump was president, it was Angela Merkel who was the leader of the free world. And she understood Putin in a way that other leaders maybe cannot, because she was brought up in East Germany, where Putin was stationed as a KGB agent. And she was one tough lady. I mean, NATO is doing a pretty good job right now, in my opinion. But if Angela Merkel was around, she would be a great plus. And I think that's one of the reasons why Putin thought NATO will just fall apart. You have Macron, you have some new guy that's hardly been in office, and he is probably listening to Republicans who are saying, oh, Biden doesn't know what he's doing. He's an old, feeble man who's got, who's incapacitated mentally. Well, Biden also has 30 years of diplomatic experience, not only in the Senate, but as vice president 8 years, where he had to travel the world, talk to world leaders. He's a person that understands where Ukraine is. John Bolton said when he spoke to Trump, Trump said, is Finland a part of Ukraine? And he didn't even know where it was on the map. So stop the malarkey, as our president describes it, about Trump being better than Putin. All right, here's the other thing. I flip around all the cable channels at night to get different points of view. And of course, Fox is on a different world, and Tucker Carlson was making excuses for Putin. And he said, what do I care about Ukraine? Why should any American care about Ukraine? And now he's saying, why are they saying that I supported Putin? But anyway, what really has happened, CNN, which was in the crapper after Trump left the White House, people weren't tuning in. Their ratings fell into the basement. Today, CNN is indispensable. CNN has people on the ground, and specifically, they have Clarissa Ward, who basically took my breath away. She was at a bridge that had been bombed, and people were trying to cross this bombed out bridge from Ukraine to get to safety. And they even had to waddle through the water. And a lot of them were very old people who could barely walk. And one of them, Clarissa Ward, turned from the cameras and said, look, I'm going to help this lady. She's having trouble getting through. And she took this old lady and started speaking to her. I thought at the time she was speaking to her in Ukrainian. I later found out she was speaking to her in Russian. Do you know Clarissa Ward speaks 7 languages?
Wow.
Arabic, Mandarin, French, Italian, Russian, English, and I think that's 6, so I must have left one out. But my jaw dropped when I saw this. Maybe yours will too. Take a look at this.
Awful scene, and these people are the lucky ones. Можно вам помочь? Можно вам помочь? Мне очень жарко. Это плохая. Можно вам помочь? Давайте мне вот это. Давайте мне. I'm just gonna help her carry this bag a second. Excuse me, John. While we try to. Ну вот. Ничего.
Amazing. Amazing. Compare that to the bloviating on Fox News. And for those of you who don't speak Russian, as I do, spokojnej noche, Dobrovye utro, spasiba, niet da. That's my Russian. But what she was saying was, go over there. It's very bad. And she said, give me your bags. And then she said, it's going to be okay. And at the very end, she asked for the lady's name in Russian. That's a correspondent and she's in a war zone on top of everything else. All right. Now, one of the other things we've been suggesting over and over again is banning Russian imports of oil to the United States. And the Democrats and the Republicans, they're all on board with this. Do you know how much oil we imported from Russia in 2020?
No.
1.3% of our oil came from Russia. 1.3%.
That's not big, but it's something.
Oh, it's nothing.
Something.
And in 2020, we imported 3%. You know, we get 61% of our oil in both the last 2 years from what country?
The United States?
Yeah.
Good.
What country do we get it from?
From the United States?
No, we get it from Canada.
Canada, okay.
Canada. And also this year, American oil production is up 5%. And as I've mentioned,
and how much do we get from the United States?
I can't.
Do you know? No.
Domestic production, I don't know.
All right.
But I do know that it's up 5% over last year. And I do know that Iran, I mean, certainly it's significant. The amount that we get here, and that the Biden administration has been begging frackers and begging oil drillers to increase their production. And the frackers and the oil companies are saying, I don't think so. Me likey $120 barrel of oil.
Right.
Why should I bring the price down with more output? So, but they've gone to them. The frackers, I know, especially a few weeks ago, they said, please increase production. And they said, we've suffered over the years. We want to return a profit to our executives and to our shareholders. So the price of gas is going up. But I'm old enough to remember 1973. When OPEC shut down imports and we had lines at the pumps. We're not seeing that, yet. It's just a matter of paying the price. And just remember, the same people who always shout at you, freedom isn't free, are the ones who are complaining because they have to pay 50 cents a gallon more to protect the freedom of the world. All right. Now, one of the most ridiculous things that was said was, Russia's director of the Foreign Intelligence Service tried to claim that the sanctions and the actions that the free world, because we can start saying the free world again, because Putin's clamped down on everything from journalists to the demonstrators, thousands of demonstrators in his country under arrest for peacefully expressing their opinions against the war. He blamed the sanctions and the isolation of Russia on cancel culture. He said, it is now customary to say in a tolerant, liberal, fascist environment that what they're doing is cancellation. Cancel culture. Okay, well,
Who said that?
Russia's director of the Foreign Intelligence Service.
Okay.
Now, recently, though, there have been bans on Russian artists in America. I mean, the Metropolitan Opera, they canned their big Wagnerian soprano, who is Russian. She wouldn't denounce Putin. Some of them have denounced the war. They won't denounce. It's sort of like Trump, you know. They weasel their way around it. Other performers, even at Carnegie Hall, have been canceled because of this. And you know, there's an argument for and against that. Listen, if you got family in Russia and you come out in America and start speaking against Putin,
right?
I mean, there's no mad dog theory behind that. You know, you'll be singing your opera in the gulag. You'll be
and knowing that, was it right to fire the woman? I mean, think about that. Was that the right treatment? Because you wouldn't say anything bad about him if you knew your family was a target.
I know. I'm saying it's a difficult question, but I'm also saying this. I am as emotional as anyone watching what's happening in that country. Seeing a baby 1.5 years bleeding out and the mother wailing over him, seeing the people at the train stations desperately trying to get away, seeing the interviews with Ukrainians who burst into tears saying this is their worst nightmare. Yeah, sometimes, well, not sometimes, through this, I have a visceral, emotional reaction toward what's going on. And it isn't always just rational. And I'm sure others have that as well. All right, so in terms of cancel culture, in no way is this as important as anything that is going on right now.
This is called a segue.
Yes, but it's cancel culture. 1996, the Richard Bey Show is on the air. Everybody's imitating what I'm doing. Sally, Jesse, Maury, Springer, Danny Bonaducci, Tempest Bledsoe, Carney Wilson. Oh my God, it was a cornucopia of trash talk. You could start in the morning and Jenny Jones. I mean, Charles Perez, remember him? You could start in the morning and go into the evening and watch nothing but talk shows.
How about Montel?
Montel, I'm sorry I left him out. I'm sure I left somebody else out. You know that. So anyway, there were so many of them. Really, the market would have winnowed itself out eventually anyway. But what happened in 96 was that 2 sitting senators and a former Department of Education chief, Bill Bennett, Joe Lieberman, Sam Nunn, they started to come out and say, here, let me give you his exact quote here. He says, he said, we've got to get rid of this cultural rot. We have to take out the trash. And they asked advertisers to take responsibility for sponsoring these shows. They didn't just go after the networks or whatever. They went after the advertisers. And they were fairly successful. When I did the Richard Bey Show, we used to have these big conventions where media buyers would be there. And they were one of Sinclair. I was on every Sinclair station. This is before they turned into the Trump network. And Sinclair loved my show. They got great ratings. But when I went to their media buyers convention, and it was on the west coast of Florida, the buyers would come up to me and say, I love your show. I'd really love to buy it, but you're on a blacklist. And there were all these shows that were blacklisted from commercial sponsors. We were one of them. And it did affect us. The management came to me and said, can't you do something different with the show? And I said, yeah, all right, I'll try to do different things. And I did. I won't go into each one of them. But somebody seeing an opportunity, launched The Rosie Show. And she was on the cover of Newsweek. She was the wonderful, good Samaritan who stepped into the fray, the queen of nice. And we were all the big bad wolves surrounding poor Rosie trying to clean up television. Well, the fact of the matter was I had a lot of producers who worked on Rosie. And afterwards they would tell me that what a bitch she was and how mean she was to people. One producer told me he was walking down the hallway and she was coming in the other direction. And he said, "Hey, Rosie." And she turned around, belched in his face, and kept walking. She was, listen, I realize Rosie has, some kind of a mental problem, but she's, and she's a very talented lady and she did some good things and the show wasn't bad, but she was not the queen of nice. So the management had asked me to do something different, so I thought I'd do a takeoff on Rosie and call myself the king of nice. And I had a variety show. Rosie adopted a little baby and talked about it on the air. And Kathy Lee, who was also so nice you could get diabetes from her sugary sweetness, she talked about her son, Parker. So I adopted a little baby called Porker. And instead of having those cute kids that Rosie had on her show, I had Bey's brats. And she supported Broadway, which was one of the great things that Rosie did. And I brought a Broadway show on the stage and danced with them. I called it The Richie Show. And it was my response to Rosie and Joe Lieberman and Bill Bennett and Sam Nunn. And here I am singing myself the opening song. He's just one of the guys, better known as the king of nights. He's never cranky, he's never bitchy. He's just Richie, trying to make it as a single dad. He's the host that's totally rad. He's a little campy, he's a little kitschy. He's just Richie. Life can be rosy when you spend it with a Richie. Did you get that one?
I got it.
Rosie. And here I am breastfeeding my baby. I can have no privacy. Oh no.
Ladies and gentlemen, here he is.
Please.
The Prince of Polite, the Duke of Diplomacy, the King of Nice, and the host of The Richie Show, Richie Bey.
That's rich. All right, instead of having an orchestra, we have a Polish lady playing the accordion.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful. Yes, yes. Oh, that was so nice of you. Ladies and gentlemen, please, one more round of applause, though, for someone that we were very lucky to get here today. For musical accompaniment, our band is the Grand Marshal in the Polish-American Day Parade. You don't know what lengths we had to go to get her to play here today. Regina Kujova, please.
Thank you. God bless America.
Yeah, we also couldn't afford to pay an orchestra. She was cheaper.
Thank you so much. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Now, you may have noticed something new here today. You may, really, yeah. After seeing how successful Rosie and Kathy Lee were when they had a baby or adopted a baby, and they would talk about the baby, I said, you know what this show really needs? I really have to get a baby. So I went out and I adopted little Porker. That's right, little Porker. And I have to say, I have a newfound respect for those mothers. How they take care of those children and host a show at the same time, I don't understand. Now, you know what? I'm very concerned, though, not to exploit my baby on the air. So, Porker, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to put the baby in the crib for the rest of the show, okay? So really, don't pay too much attention to the baby. There you go. Okay. Yes. All right. Pleasant dreams there. Okay, What?
I'm hungry.
Oh, the baby's hungry. Oh, the baby's still hungry. All right, here. Go ahead. Here, some food for the baby. Okay. There you go. All right.
I really should mention Walter, who did the sound effects, which were just wonderful
Baby must be fed.
and
All
made
right,
the
now when
show
my baby grows
special.
up, I hope my baby grows up to be as glorious and glamorous and as good as the kids we have here today, because we brought a whole bunch of kids in here today. They're going to be painting portraits of me, and at the end of the show, we're going to see their artistic creations. Can we bring on the Bey Brats, please? The Bey Brats! Here they are! Aren't they cute? Oh, fabulous! What do you have to say?
Get the real boots, buddy.
Get some real boots, but what do you have to say?
Yeah, at the end of the show, they did portraits of me that were grotesque
Can we go home
and
now?
insulting.
We've got better things to do than watch the Richard Bey Show.
Oh,
That's why they call, the show's called Bring Into Noise, Bring Into Funk, but how would you define funk? What do you call funk?
here I am, like Rosie, promoting Broadway.
Funk is what you bring to the table.
Come on, Bill Bennett,
You mean,
Joe Lieberman.
Would I have funk?
I'm the king of nice.
Yeah? All right, so you think I could do a little dance like that as we go out? If you guys gave me a beat, that we could funk
I'll
our
give
way
you
out of
something.
here?
I'll give you something.
Did you ever see my dance at the beginning of the show?
No.
You've never?
No.
That's pretty funky. It's pretty scary. Okay, well, go give me a beat, okay?
right.
And let's go off to break.
I'll tell you what to do.
You'll tell me what to do, okay.
Come on.
Okay. I'm loosening up my legs here.
Yeah. Here we go.
Now you're dancing funk with them.
Yeah, now I need a hip replacement.
Bring in the funk! Go see it!
You're shuffling pretty well on that stage.
Yeah, I can't believe this didn't change my image completely. Oh.
Little Porker, I forgot all about you. Time to clean you up and take you home. Hey, listen, thanks for joining me on my inaugural show, The Richie Show. From the King of Nice to all of you out there, as always. Porker, say goodbye. Yeah, Porker. Oh, get a lot to eat. All our best.
All right. I think that's enough of this. All right. Well, I'm sure that most of you know the sad story. Little Porker grew up, wrote a tell-all Daddy Dearest book about the abuse, both verbal and physical, that he suffered under my parenthood. My career was over. Little Porker now has his own reality show on Bravo. Well, I'm here doing a podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. And remember, you can listen to this as an audio podcast, or you could subscribe and watch it every week. But as always, I appreciate your support and your viewership, and all my best.